Hello, everybody. This is episode 32 of In the Know, my daily short form podcast show, which is aimed at putting people in the know. A show where I cover a variety of topics using my experiences and viewpoints in life to put people in that know. You say, what is the know? It's the understanding that seems to be hard for people to grasp, which can make their lives a lot simpler. The following is an intro speech into the topic of today, and that introduction speech is regarding lowering standards for student entry into schools. See, living in New York City, there's this notion that students must not be forced to take certain skills tests in order to get into specialized schools. And the reason being that they are at a disadvantage. But what happens when you thrust these students into schools that they are not qualified to attend? You start to not only have problems with those as well as other students, yet it is really that cut clean and dry? Are we sure that it brings down the morale of the school? Well, in my opinion, I think that it does not only hurt the students, but it also hurts the school that the kids' parents are trying to get them to attend. Let's analyze this problem. Why lowering the bar hurts students in the end. Let's look at what the bar is. There's a standard that students must be able to amount to, and that is testable to get into certain schools. That is something that I see living in New York City. There are these specialized schools that students must take tests to attend and to provide for a much better education, but the tests are out of the learning ability of the students. When you're coming from such a poor school system, how do you overnight take a test to get into the schools? Well, you have students from communities just as poor passing the test. So that could be seen as a way to say, look, these environments are struggling. How are their children taking the test and passing? Because they're taking on the standardized test and winning. So the capabilities are there. How do you prepare the students you aim to help get into these schools? The students, the kids whose parents want them to get into the good schools, are trying to pass certain difficult tests, don't truly care as much, but they don't understand their future chances. To them, it's nothing more than a normal school. But when you put these new surroundings in these kids and them around their own future surroundings, they are more than not attached to their new surrounding environment. So, what about the students already at the schools, or students who can pass the test given to them? They only know what their parents and educators talk about. For the students coming into the schools, taking the test with them, they're every other student in the school. Now, let's look at something else. Let's look at the parents' perception. These are the people who are going to be focused on the kids coming into the schools. They are concerned about the overall standards of the school based on who will be coming to the school. For this will and should be the basis for attending. Their children will be attending and taking the test, so they want the new kids to come in to take the test as well. But people in the school board may not look at things this way, which causes a lot of problems for the students once they get to the school. The kids only understand what the parents tell them, so they're about to step into a situation where they're unaware of the feelings about them being there at that particular school. This could prove to be an unhealthy educational environment. Let's look at what the schools are. These are the institutions, a place for cultivating the minds of young people, which will become the future leaders of our society. And for this reason, parents want to send their children to certain schools, sometimes even at the cost of going into debt to send your child to a certain school. But when it comes to these type of competitive schools, the short-term negative is worth it because of the long-run positives attached to it. Well, let's look at the city administration's view. Looking at how the city addresses certain problems, they don't always have the most productive means of coming up with solutions. In New York City, when it comes to getting in kids into schools from underprivileged schools and neighborhoods into specialized academic environments, they tend to want to thrust the kids into the locations. And it makes more sense to just help them prepare for the actual tests that all kids have to take in order to attend the schools. But for some reason, this does not come across as the logical choice for them to make. I mean, they're spending the money on a lot of solutions that never work already. Why not try the solution that has a chance of working? And with lowering standards for kids to get into schools, there are going to be the downsides. But let's look at the upsides first, going to the schools and adjusting the tests. When I was growing up, I wish I had schools available to me like a Stuyvesant, which is a well known specialized school in New York City. And there were recent protests over the testing and how some kids are taking the test and not getting in over kids not taking the test and getting into the school. But what does this have to do with the student themselves? They're being deprived of a great education they wouldn't otherwise receive at their current schools. While adults argue amongst themselves, the kids get hurt. But with the upsides, there are the problems from allowing such admission to schools to exist. Let's look at the downsides. The problem with allowing students to be shuffled into a school without having to abide by the standards is that it brings down the value of the institution. The school is great because it's difficult to get into, and changing the standards affects the entry purpose, which is it's supposed to be difficult. The other problem that arises is that kids who enter may be behind. So, do we change the entire core curriculum? Do we allow everyone to be behind because of a few entries are tossed into the school? We can't lower the bar because the bar being where it is the reason you want your child to go to this school. Let's look at something like an expensive tote bag that's $5,000. Yes, someone who can't afford it wants prices adjusted to where they can afford it. You want the bag because it's exclusive. So lowering the bar makes you not want it. So we have to train young people on the current standard, not adjust, which could lower value as well as hold other students behind to help a chosen few. So let's look at the end statement. Why we should not lower the education expectations. Overall, I don't think it's a good idea to bring down the standards of any institution. In order to maintain the interest generated from school, it must be more difficult than most schools. You see, we treat these children like they're not capable of passing tests just because they come from poor communities. And yes, they are at a strong disadvantage, but give them the proper tools to take the real exams. By not, you're actually crippling them more because in life, there are no shoe-ins. You're just out in the cold. So, thank you for listening to In the Know. I can't wait to bring the next episode where we talk about what inner city schools really need to make themselves successful.